What if the reason your love life feels confusing isn't because of them, but because of how you've been showing up in it? Not because you're too much, not because you're not enough, but because somewhere along the way, you started measuring your worth by someone else's attention or silence. We've all been there, waiting for the text that doesn't come, replaying conversations in our heads like detectives trying to find the moment where we lost them, feeling the high of being seen and the crash of being ignored. It's exhausting, not just emotionally, but spiritually. Because beneath it all, what we're really aching for isn't attention, it's peace, clarity, connection that doesn't cost us our self-respect. But here's what no one tells you about modern dating. It's not a game you need to win. It's a mirror that reveals how well you know yourself. And that's why today's message matters. Because there is a quieter, more powerful way to navigate love. One that doesn't rely on strategies or second-guessing, but on timeless truths that have guided men and women through the storms of human connection for thousands of years. The Stoics, Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, Seneca didn't write about Tinder, but they understood human nature better than most psychologists today. They knew how desire can cloud judgment, how fear of loss can make us betray ourselves, and how peace isn't found in control, but in self-mastery. So if you're tired of chasing love that leaves you hollow, if you're done confusing chemistry for character, and if you're ready to love without losing yourself, then this video was made for you. Today, we'll walk through 7 Stoic principles that don't just shift how you date, they change who you become. From the power of silence to the strength of letting go, you'll discover how ancient philosophy can unlock a new way to experience modern connection, with dignity, with depth, and without desperation. And if that speaks to something deep in you, if even part of you whispers, "This is what I've been needing," then I invite you to like this video, subscribe to Stoic now, and drop your thoughts in the comments. You're not alone on this path, and your voice matters here. Take a breath. Let go of the noise. Because now, we begin. Number 1. Control only what you can. There's a quiet war that plays out inside nearly every modern dater. It doesn't make noise, doesn't show up on Instagram stories, and doesn't spill over into group chats. But you feel it, the anxiety in the pit of your stomach when the response doesn't come. The endless refreshing, the subtle self-doubt, the story your mind writes when someone pulls away. You start to question your worth, not because anything's wrong with you, but because your peace has been placed into hands that were never meant to hold it. The Stoics had a name for this kind of suffering. They didn't call it heartbreak. They called it misalignment. A misalignment between your expectations and what life actually gives you. Epictetus, a former slave turned philosopher, said it best: "Some things are up to us, and some things are not." That single sentence could change your entire love life. Because what it asks, what it demands, is that you separate what you do from how others react. You may send the kindest message, show up with real presence, offer your truth and vulnerability, but whether they meet it, ignore it, or misunderstand it, that's not in your control. And the moment you make peace with that is the moment you take your power back. See, Jessica is like many of us. She texts someone she likes, then checks her phone 17 times in the next hour. She rereads the message, wonders if the emoji was too much, whether the tone was too soft or too strong. She's no longer in her life, she's in her head. And she's handed over control of her peace to a stranger with a lock screen. Now, Marcus? Marcus sends the text, because he means it. Then he goes to the gym. He finishes that report he's been putting off. He meditates. He meets a friend for dinner. And when he checks his phone later, it's not from panic, it's from presence. Because he knows he cannot control when someone replies, only how he chooses to show up with intention. This isn't about pretending you don't care. Stoicism is not emotional numbness. It's emotional maturity. It's looking at the chaos of dating, the ambiguity, the rejection, the silence, and saying, "I will not let this bend me out of shape. I will stay anchored in who I am." And if you're wondering how to do that practically, here's a truth that may surprise you. Every moment you spend waiting for someone's response is a moment you could be responding to your own life. What did you neglect in yourself while you were obsessing over someone else's absence? Did you skip the gym? Ignore your journal? Lose sleep? Forget the sound of your own breath? The Stoics believe the most sacred space is your attention. Where you place it shapes your destiny. And when your attention is consumed by another's indifference, you are exiled from your own soul. Instead, return to the one thing you always have access to: your choice. You choose whether to spiral or stand tall. You choose whether to chase a ghost or center your energy. You choose whether to beg for breadcrumbs or bake your own bread. And it's in those small, invisible choices where power is quietly reclaimed. You see, the world sells us a story that love is a game of control. If we say the right thing, wait the right amount of hours, show just the right amount of interest, then maybe, just maybe, we'll win affection. But the Stoics offer a radical counter-narrative. You do not win love. You embody love, and then you let the world meet you as it will. Your job is not to control how you are received. Your job is to remain in integrity with how you give. And here's the paradox. The more you try to control someone's reaction, the less attractive you become. Not because neediness is ugly, but because control is misaligned with confidence. And confidence, real confidence, is simply this: being rooted in your own value, regardless of whether someone else reflects it back to you. So how do you practice this? Begin small. When you send a message, set it down like a stone in the river. Do not chase it downstream. When you sense anxiety rise, breathe into your body. Ask yourself, is this something I can control? When someone pulls away, do not pull harder. Return to yourself. Read, reflect, walk, build, create. Fill your own cup, not in defiance, but in dignity. And if someone sees you, really sees you, they will walk toward your wholeness, not your performance. Remember what Marcus Aurelius wrote: you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. In love, in life, in every silent hour of wondering, that's the place you must come back to. Because no matter how uncertain modern dating becomes, this one truth remains: when you release what you can't control, you reclaim everything you can. And in that space, freedom grows. Number 2, don't chase, attract through presence. Have you ever met someone who didn't try to impress you, yet you couldn't stop thinking about them? They didn't boast, didn't overextend. They didn't need to explain their worth, because something about the way they carried themselves already whispered it. That is the silent magnetism Stoics mastered centuries ago. In a world obsessed with performance, likes, texts, displays of interest, what stands out most is restraint. It's easy to chase. The moment you feel desire, your instinct is to act. Send another message, find reasons to be around them, seek signs of their attention. But chasing has a flavor. It doesn't taste like love. It tastes like fear dressed up as effort. Fear of being overlooked. Fear of not being enough. Fear that if you don't do something, anything, they'll forget you exist. But Stoicism teaches a different rhythm, a slower, deeper cadence, one that starts not with action, but with being. As Marcus Aurelius said, the best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury. In other words, don't meet chaos with chaos. Don't meet games with games. Don't meet rejection with desperation. Meet it all with presence. Presence is not passive. It is not waiting on the sidelines hoping to be noticed. Presence is power in stillness. It is the quiet confidence that radiates from knowing, I am already whole. And wholeness doesn't chase, it invites. Picture a flame. If you try too hard to control it, you snuff it out. But if you sit near it with reverence, its heat reaches you. That's how authentic presence works in dating. It doesn't shout. It doesn't perform. It simply is. And people feel it, even if they can't name it. So how do you stop chasing without becoming cold or indifferent? You return to your center. You ask, am I doing this because it aligns with who I am? Or because I'm trying to get a reaction? One of the greatest freedoms Stoicism gives us is this: the ability to act from virtue, not from outcome. You don't flirt to be validated. You speak with warmth because you are warmth. You don't ask them to meet up to get attention. You do it because you genuinely enjoy their company. And if they decline, you don't make it mean anything about your worth. That kind of detachment is rare. It's not apathy, it's alignment. Think of it like this: the tree doesn't chase the bird that lands on its branch. It simply offers a place to rest. If the bird stays, it stays. If it flies away, the tree remains rooted, still growing, still rising, still sacred. When you embody that energy, when you focus more on being the kind of person who draws respect and joy by how you live, not by how you impress, everything changes. Your conversations deepen, your neediness fades, your standards rise, and most importantly, your peace is no longer dependent on someone else's proximity. I remember a story from a client of mine. We'll call him Elijah. He was used to trying hard in dating. Thoughtful texts, little gifts, constant availability. But nothing seemed to land. Women appreciated him, but rarely felt that deeper pull. Until one day he stopped. Not out of bitterness, but out of clarity. He realized he was giving not from overflow, but from hunger. And hunger can never be attractive, because it takes more than it gives. Elijah started rebuilding. He filled his days with things that nourished his spirit: weightlifting, reading, hiking, time in silence. And slowly, he became magnetic. Not because he was louder, but because he was fuller. The next time he dated, he didn't overextend. He gave what felt true and let the rest unfold. And it did. The connection that came wasn't something he chased. It was something he invited. Through presence, through patience, through peace. Stoic presence teaches us that attraction isn't something we force. It's something we become. Want to be more attractive? Don't memorize lines. Don't strategize your replies. Learn to sit with yourself in silence and not flinch. Cultivate depth. Have a mission. Protect your energy. When you walk into a room carrying purpose and inner stillness, people feel it. Because most people are drowning in their own insecurity. When they meet someone who's at home in their own skin, it's like a breath of fresh air. This is why presence is powerful. It disrupts the cycle. You're not chasing, so they're not pulling away. You're not forcing connection, so it happens naturally, or not at all. And either outcome is okay. There's a line I often repeat to myself. Let them be drawn to your peace, not your pursuit. Not because you're playing hard to get, but because peace is the rarest currency in modern love and the most irresistible one. Seneca once said, "A gem cannot be polished without friction, nor a man perfected without trials." Presence is built through the trial of restraint. The decision to stay grounded when everything in you wants to reach. The trust that what's real doesn't need to be chased. So next time you're tempted to prove yourself, to push harder, to seek their attention, pause, breathe, return to yourself. And remember, the most magnetic thing you can offer in a noisy, desperate world is your quiet, radiant wholeness. Number 3, know thyself before you date anyone. Before you fall for someone's eyes, fall into your own soul. Before you give your heart away, know what lives inside it. We rush so fast toward connection, toward the thrill of romance, the validation of being wanted, the illusion of being chosen, that we often bypass the most sacred step of all, asking ourselves who we are before we share that self with another. And that is where most relationships quietly begin to unravel. The Stoics, especially Seneca, spoke often of self-examination, not as punishment, not as self-obsession, but as preparation for life, for love, for every storm that would surely come. Seneca wrote, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." And one of the greatest sources of that imagined suffering is entering a relationship hoping it will complete you, when you have not yet become complete within yourself. Dating without self-knowledge is like sailing without a compass. You might feel the wind, you might move fast, but you'll have no idea where you're going, and no ability to course correct when things start to drift. We live in an age of overexposure and under-reflection. We know what our type is, what apps we like, what filters make us feel attractive. But very few of us stop to ask the questions that truly matter. What are my core values? What wounds am I still carrying? Am I dating from abundance or from loneliness disguised as desire? These are hard questions, but they are sacred ones. Because without them, we turn people into projects. Or worse, into painkillers. There's a story I often tell. A man I once mentored, let's call him Devin, came to me after his third breakup in 2 years. Each time, the pattern was the same. Initial excitement, fast connection, emotional intensity, followed by slow resentment, misalignment, and eventually, collapse. He kept asking, "Why do they always change?" I gently offered a reframe. What if they didn't change? What if you never really saw them, because you never fully saw yourself? That stopped him. He realized that he had never entered those relationships with clarity. He entered with hope, with longing, with a deep ache to be seen. But he had never sat with himself long enough to know what he truly needed, or what he was trying to fill with someone else's affection. So we began the real work, not of fixing, but of facing. Devin began journaling daily, just 10 minutes a night, asking himself questions like, what did I feel today and why? What did I avoid? What lit me up? What drained me? Slowly, patterns emerged. He saw that he often said yes when he meant no, that he confused attention with affection, that his fear of being alone made him tolerate behaviors that bruised his spirit. He didn't stop dating, but he began dating differently, from a place of presence, from a place of sovereignty, and eventually, from a place of discernment so sharp that when he finally met someone who aligned with his values, he didn't question it. He received it, not as validation, but as resonance. This is what happens when you know yourself. Love stops being a negotiation and starts being a reflection. You stop asking, Do they like me? You start asking, do I respect who I become around them? You stop wondering, will they choose me? You begin to ask, am I proud of the choices I make when I'm with them? That shift is everything, because it moves love from performance to participation, from insecurity to intimacy, from seeking to sharing. And the beautiful thing is, you don't need to be fully healed to begin. Stoicism doesn't require perfection. It requires awareness. It asks you to see your wounds, name them, and take responsibility for not bleeding them onto others. So how do you begin knowing yourself in a world that teaches you to look outward? Start in silence. Before the date, before the text, before the scroll, sit. Ask, what am I bringing into this? What am I hoping they'll give me that I haven't given myself? You'll be amazed at what surfaces. Then, begin a reflection practice. Seneca would end each day by reviewing his thoughts and actions, not to judge them, but to align them with his highest values. Do the same. Were you honest today? Did you act from virtue or fear? Did you betray yourself to please another? You are not dating to be rescued. You are dating to be witnessed. And only when you witness yourself can you recognize the sacredness of that act. This is not easy. Self-knowledge is confronting. You'll find contradictions, unresolved pain, shadowed places you've hidden from. But you'll also find gold, strength you forgot, standards you buried, desires you suppressed to be more palatable. And here's the deeper truth. The more you know yourself, the less likely you are to be seduced by people who don't. Because what once felt like chemistry now feels like chaos. What once thrilled you now alarms you. What once passed as passion now registers as projection. Clarity sharpens everything. And when someone comes along, because they will, who sees you, honors you, and moves in rhythm with your values, you will recognize them, not as your missing piece, but as a mirror, a fellow traveler. And the relationship you build will not be one of addiction, but of alignment. So before you fall for anyone's smile, ask yourself if you've made peace with your own reflection. Before you offer your heart, make sure it's not full of fragments from people who never earned it. And before you write another love story, take the time to read your own pages first. Only then can love become something sacred. Number 4, expect rejection and stay grounded. We all know the sting of rejection, that text that never came, the date that felt electric until it vanished into silence, the growing closeness that collapsed without warning. Sometimes it's a direct no. Other times it's subtler, the slow fade, the energy shift, the polite distance that speaks louder than words. But here's a quiet truth no one wants to admit. Rejection is not the villain. It is the compass. We are taught to see rejection as failure, as evidence that something is wrong with us. That if only we were more attractive, more successful, more clever, then maybe they would have stayed. But the Stoics? They had no time for that illusion. They believed rejection wasn't something to fight or fear. It was something to embrace, to love, even. The principle of amor fati, love of fate, invites us to welcome all outcomes, even the unwanted ones, as essential chapters in our story. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "What stands in the way becomes the way." And that includes heartbreak. It includes not being chosen. It includes being misunderstood, left on read, ghosted, or slowly faded out of someone's orbit. Because what if rejection isn't an attack on your worth, but a protection of your path? What if the silence you're mourning is life's way of clearing space for something deeper? I remember a man, let's call him Julian. He was enamored by a woman he met at a meditation retreat. She was graceful, insightful, spiritually sharp. They exchanged numbers, connected, and for a few weeks, it seemed promising. But then her replies slowed. The warmth cooled, until eventually, she simply stopped reaching out. Julian spiraled. He revisited every conversation, every detail. Did I say something wrong? Should I have played it cooler? His self-worth took a hit, and he began questioning everything from his appearance to his masculinity. Until one evening, we sat down, and I asked him one question. What if her rejection is not about your failure, but about her clarity? He paused. Then something shifted. He saw the truth, that her silence wasn't an insult. It was an answer, a form of honesty, a gift disguised as a wound. And once he accepted that truth, he was free. Because rejection only hurts when we fight it. When we try to make it mean something it doesn't. When we tie our value to someone's inability or unwillingness to receive us. But when we learn to see rejection as redirection, something powerful happens. We stop personalizing what was never personal. We stop chasing closure and start closing chapters ourselves, not in bitterness, but in reverence. Because to be rejected is not to be reduced. It is to be refined. It is life whispering, not here, not this, not them. And when we listen, truly listen, we begin to see the wisdom in the no. We stop confusing emotional intensity with compatibility. We stop interpreting silence as mystery and start seeing it as misalignment. We stop begging for clarity from those who never had it to begin with. And in that space, we come home to ourselves. This is what it means to stay grounded. To not let rejection uproot you. To let it pass through you like wind through the branches, without tearing you from your center. So how do you do that? You begin by shifting your lens. Instead of asking, why didn't they want me? Ask, was I showing up in a way that honored me? If the answer is yes, then you did your part. The rest is none of your business. Then, bring your attention inward. Not in self-blame, but in self-inquiry. What did this experience reflect back to you? Where did you abandon yourself for the illusion of being chosen? What parts of you long for healing, not from them, but from within? This is the journaling the Stoics practiced. Not just writing events, but excavating meaning. Not ruminating, but refining. And finally, return to your rhythm. Because rejection will always feel louder when your life is quiet. Fill your days not with distractions, but with devotion. Read, move, create, serve, not to fill the void, but to remind yourself that your life is rich, even without them. That your days are sacred, even when they're not shared. That your journey continues, even when someone steps off the path. Seneca said, if a man knows not to which port he sails, no wind is favorable. Rejection can feel like a storm. But if you know who you are, if your direction is inward, steady, clear, then even the strongest winds cannot break you. They can only carry you somewhere wiser. So the next time someone walks away, let them. The next time your message goes unanswered, release it. The next time you feel overlooked, remember, not being chosen is not the same as being unworthy. And when that ache rises in your chest, that old longing to be accepted, meet it not with shame, but with stillness. Because you are not here to chase what was never yours. You are here to become someone rejection can unmake. Someone who stands rooted in storms. Someone who knows, I do not need to be chosen to know I matter. Number 5, don't try to change them, see them clearly. We don't fall for people, we fall for stories. Stories we tell ourselves about who they are. Stories about who they might become. Stories about what we believe they feel, even when they've said nothing, or worse, have said something and we've chosen not to hear it. And that, right there, is the quiet tragedy of so many modern relationships. Not that someone lied, but that we ignored the truth in favor of the fantasy. The Stoics had a name for this distortion. Fantasia, the illusions of perception. Marcus Aurelius warned us, you want to live according to nature? Then start seeing people as they are, not as you wish them to be. It's a simple line, but it cuts deep, because what he's really saying is this. The root of your suffering isn't in the other person. It's in your refusal to see them clearly. We don't suffer because people change. We suffer because we clung to an image they never lived up to in the first place. I remember a woman, we'll call her Rachel. She fell hard for a man who was charismatic, creative, magnetic. He had edge, mystery. He also had an avoidant communication style, inconsistent energy, and a trail of vague X's he just wasn't compatible with. But Rachel didn't see that. She saw the potential. She saw what he could become. If only he healed, if only he matured, if only he received the kind of love she had to offer. She started interpreting emotional unavailability as depth, silence as stoicism, hot and cold behavior as trauma he just needed help working through. What she missed was the reality that he showed her, again and again, exactly who he was. Not with malice, not with manipulation, but with clarity she wasn't ready to accept. And that's the temptation we all face when we want something or someone so badly. We stop seeing what's there and start projecting what we hope is possible. But Stoicism teaches a more powerful way to love. A cleaner, braver way. Not with the desperation of what could be, but with the dignity of what is. To love from a place of discernment, not delusion. To observe someone's actions as information, not as puzzles to decode. To understand that the person in front of you is not a project, They are not raw clay for you to mold. They are not a blank space for you to paint your hopes upon. They are a sovereign being with patterns, priorities, wounds, timelines. And your job is to see that, to honor that, even when it doesn't match what you wanted. That doesn't mean being cynical, or guarded, or cold. It means choosing clarity over fantasy. It means watching not what they say, but how they show up. It means accepting that love cannot be built on your potential for them. It can only grow from their pattern of being. Because here's the hard truth. You can fall in love with someone's essence, but still not be compatible with their habits. You can admire someone's heart and still realize their wounds don't play well with yours. You can respect someone deeply and still recognize that you were meant to cross paths, not to walk together. And when you learn to see without editing, something shifts. You stop over-explaining their behavior to your friends. You stop justifying the things that feel misaligned. You stop ignoring the part of you that already knows the truth. This is not detachment. It's not emotional bypassing. It is devotion to the reality of what is. And that is one of the highest forms of love. Because when you love someone for who they are, not for who they might become, you give them dignity. You give them space. You love with open eyes. You don't beg for alignment. You don't resent their limits. You simply bless the truth and let it guide your choices. This is how you avoid toxic patterns. You don't wait for the red flags to turn green. You don't beg breadcrumbs to become a banquet. You don't rewrite their disinterest into some deeper test of your loyalty. You observe, you accept, and you act from clarity. Remember, Marcus Aurelius didn't say, fix people. He said, see them. Because when you truly see, you don't need to force. You don't need to manipulate. You don't need to suffer. You simply know, and that knowing frees you. So if you're holding on to someone because of potential, pause. Ask yourself, do I love them, or the version of them I keep imagining? Am I respecting their reality, or rewriting it so I don't have to feel the grief of letting go? That grief? It's sacred. It's not a weakness. It's a sign that you are finally seeing clearly. And from that place, you can love with wisdom. You can choose not just who feels good in fleeting moments, but who fits into the full vision of your life. Not as a fantasy, but as a fact. Number 6, use silence as strength. Not every response deserves your voice. Not every question deserves your urgency. Not every discomfort demands your explanation. In a world addicted to constant replies, instant messaging, and emotional overexposure, silence has become one of the rarest forms of power. And yet, to the Stoics, silence was not just a tool, it was a virtue. There's a reason Marcus Aurelius rarely wasted words. A reason Epictetus reminded his students, if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. He wasn't promoting passivity, he was inviting presence. Because only those who are truly grounded in themselves can withstand the pressure to react, to explain, to fill every quiet space with noise. Modern dating often feels like a pressure cooker of expectations. You're told to communicate more, to be clear, to not play games. And those are noble ideals, until they become compulsions. Until we confuse over-communicating with connection and urgency with authenticity. Silence, in this context, is not ghosting. It is not avoidance. It is sovereignty, the deliberate choice to not betray your peace just to fill the void. You send a message. It's left on read. Your first instinct might be panic. Did I say something wrong? Are they losing interest? Should I double text? But what if, instead, you did nothing? What if you met that silence not with desperation, but with dignity? That's the space where Stoic silence lives. You don't chase. You don't spiral. You stay. Still. Rooted. Composed. Because here's the truth. How you respond in silence says more about your self-worth than anything you could say with words. There's a man I knew. We'll call him Seth. He was in the early stages of dating someone he truly admired. Things were going well, until they weren't. Her replies slowed. Her tone shifted. He felt the energy pulling away. Every part of him wanted to reach out, clarify, reclaim what was slipping. But he didn't. He chose silence. Not as punishment, but as presence. He took a breath. He sat with the discomfort. He returned to himself. The gym. His work. His friends. His journal. Days passed. Then a message came. Not an apology, but a simple, sincere explanation. She wasn't in the same place emotionally. She wished him well. Seth didn't respond with anger. He thanked her for her honesty. And he moved on, not with wounds, but with wisdom. Why? Because in that silence, he found the strength to choose self-respect over self-protection. He didn't fill the gap with neediness. He let clarity rise on its own. That is the discipline of the Stoic heart, the ability to pause before reacting, to speak only when speaking adds to truth, not just to tension. It doesn't mean you never express. It means your expression comes from clarity, not craving. There's a sacred kind of silence that occurs in emotionally healthy people. They don't interrupt to defend their ego. They don't rush to explain away discomfort. They observe. They reflect. And when they speak, their words carry weight because they were born in stillness. So how do you practice this? Start small. When someone says something that triggers you, pause. Breathe. Ask yourself, does my reply clarify or does it complicate? When you sense distance in a relationship, don't race to repair it. Observe. Step back. Let the silence speak first. Often, it will reveal what words cannot. Stoic silence is not a manipulation tactic. It is a spiritual practice, a refusal to speak from insecurity, a devotion to protecting your own sacred space, your thoughts, your energy, your peace. Because the moment you start speaking just to earn a reaction, you've already given your power away. There's a discipline in restraint that few cultivate, but those who do become unforgettable. Think of the people who hold your attention most. Are they the ones who overshare? Or the ones who speak sparingly, yet with depth? Magnetism isn't volume. It's alignment. And aligned people don't shout. They radiate. Seneca wrote, "Speech is the mirror of the mind, but silence is the mirror of the soul. It reveals not what we want others to see, but what we've trained ourselves to live with." And if you can live with silence, your own and others, then you have mastered what most people never even attempt. Because silence reveals. It reveals your wounds, your fears, your triggers, but also your wisdom, your peace, your boundaries. It teaches you when to speak and when to wait, when to engage and when to walk away. Most people talk to avoid themselves, but you sit in the quiet, and from that quiet, you rise. So the next time someone pulls away, don't chase, don't over-explain. Let the silence unfold. And in that space, trust that your presence will do what words never could. Remind the world that peace is a choice, and you've already made it. Number 7. Love is a practice of virtue, not obsession. We often think of love as a feeling, a rush, a spark, something that happens to us without warning, without choice. And because of that, we chase love like a drug. We obsess, we crave, we cling. We wrap our sense of identity around someone else's presence, their affection, their attention. And when they pull away, we unravel. But love, to the Stoics, was never about possession. It was never about obsession. Love was something else entirely. It was a virtue, not a feeling you fall into, but a way of being you rise into. Seneca, one of Stoicism's great voices, wrote, "He who is brave is free." And nowhere is this more true than in love. Because it takes courage to love from freedom, not fear. To love without needing to control, manipulate, or lose yourself in the process. To love with open hands, not clenched fists. Modern culture romanticizes obsession. We hear songs about not being able to breathe without someone, about not being complete without their touch. But obsession isn't love, it's dependence. It's the illusion that someone else can fill the void we haven't yet faced in ourselves. And that illusion breaks people. Real love, the Stoic kind, asks something higher of you. It demands virtue, temperance, courage, wisdom, justice. Temperance to not let desire cloud your judgment. Courage to be vulnerable without losing your center. Wisdom to discern between connection and codependency. Justice to treat others not as possessions, but as souls walking their own path. This is not the language of fairy tales, but it is the foundation of relationships that don't just burn, they endure. Because here's the truth. If you need someone to complete you, you will always be at their mercy. You will bend. You will shrink. You will trade your boundaries for breadcrumbs of attention. And slowly, quietly, you will disappear inside someone else's orbit. But if you practice love as virtue, something radical happens. You begin to love with strength. You begin to give, not to get, but because giving is part of your nature. You begin to choose, not from fear of being alone, but from alignment with your values. You begin to release, not because you don't care, but because you trust the process more than your grasp. And this kind of love, it doesn't leave you empty. It doesn't make you question your worth. It doesn't demand you chase, change, or contort yourself. It invites you to rise. There's a story I often reflect on. A man I once knew. His name was Elijah. Spent years falling into relationships that consumed him. He loved fiercely, gave everything, lost himself each time. After his last breakup, something cracked open. He didn't just want to feel loved. He wanted to be loved. Not in the romanticized sense, but in the grounded, virtuous, stoic way. So he changed. He stopped seeking validation in others. He read Marcus Aurelius each morning. He practiced self-restraint, not to become distant, but to become discerning. He reflected on his fears, his needs, his patterns. And the next time love entered his life, he was ready, not to be overtaken by it, but to honor it. He didn't fall in love. He stood in it. That's what Stoic love looks like. It's steady, intentional. It knows that passion is fleeting, but presence is eternal. And yes, this kind of love may not come with fireworks or late-night panic, but it comes with peace. And peace is the soil in which trust, growth, and intimacy truly take root. So ask yourself, do you love because it feels thrilling? Or because it reflects who you are at your highest? Do you pursue love like a storm, or like a still lake that holds everything without needing to grasp? The Stoics remind us, your most sacred relationship is not with another person. It's with your character. And when love comes, as it will, it should elevate that character, not compromise it. You shouldn't have to abandon your boundaries to be loved. You shouldn't have to question your worth daily just to stay connected. You shouldn't have to prove your value to someone whose vision can't see your light. Love that demands you shrink is not love, it's fear in disguise. And your heart deserves better. It deserves the kind of love that honors truth, that moves with integrity, that remains rooted when things shake, that doesn't collapse in crisis, but grows in resilience. So when you love, love from fullness, love from clarity, love not because you're empty, but because you're already overflowing. Seneca wrote, "No man is crushed by misfortune unless he has first been deceived by prosperity." The same is true for love. You will not be crushed by heartbreak if you never built your self-worth upon someone else's affection. Build your love on virtue, and you will never lose yourself in loving again. Because the deepest love you can offer someone is not your obsession. It is your presence, your clarity, your peace, and that is unforgettable. Let virtue be the love you never lose. So here we are at the quiet end of a loud journey. You've heard 7 Stoic principles, not as rules, not as strategies, but as anchors. Quiet truths you can return to when dating feels like a storm, when your heart is tender, your mind is noisy, and your worth feels like it's tied to someone else's response. Let's not recap them like a checklist. That would strip them of their soul. Instead, let's feel what they revealed. You've learned the beauty of controlling only what you can. The deep peace that comes when you stop clinging to outcomes and return to your choices, your integrity, your presence. You've discovered the quiet power of not chasing, but attracting not through charm, but through stillness. Through being a person of such inner gravity that others naturally orbit your peace. You've been reminded that before you can truly meet another, you must first meet yourself. Know your patterns. Heal your wounds. Choose from abundance, not ache. You sat with the pain of rejection and found that it cannot destroy you. That it may actually be life's gentlest redirection. That who walks away is just as sacred as who walks in. You've seen how projection blurs love, and how seeing people as they are, not as we hope, brings clarity. Not to condemn, but to choose with eyes wide open. You felt the weight of silence, not as punishment, but as power. As space where truth settles, where dignity rises, where presence outshines performance. And finally, you've redefined love. Not as obsession, not as possession, but as a daily practice of virtue, of courage, of restraint, of wisdom, of justice. A way of living so full that you have something real to give, whether or not someone else receives it. This is not how most people love, but this is how the wise love. And that wisdom? It starts in you. If this video whispered to something deep inside, if even a single sentence brought you closer to your truth, then I ask you, from one seeker to another, don't keep this to yourself. Like this video, subscribe to this channel, Stoic Now, and share your thoughts in the comments. Your story may be the reflection someone else needs to feel less alone. More than anything, I want you to know this. You do not need to be more attractive, more clever, more anything to be worthy of love. You only need to become someone who lives in alignment with your values. someone who doesn't fold for affection, someone who doesn't perform for approval, someone who can stand in silence and still feel whole. That kind of love, the love born of virtue, can never be taken from you because it doesn't depend on being chosen. It depends on being true. So the next time you enter the dating world, don't ask, will they like me? Ask, am I proud of how I show up in this? And if the answer